Audible is the leading provider of spoken word entertainment and audiobooks, ranging from bestsellers to celebrity memoirs, news, business, and self-development. Every month, members get 1 credit to pick any title, plus 2 Audible originals from a monthly selection, and access to daily news digests from the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post, as well as guided meditation programs. Between a full-time job in IT and a full-time job in podcasting, it gets harder and harder to sit down and read the books I'm interested in. This is where Audible comes in. I can listen on my daily commute, relaxing, or while out running errands and still get in the books I've been wanting to get into. You can download titles and listen offline anytime, anywhere. The app is free and can be installed on all smartphones and tablets. Now you can try Audible risk-free with a special 30-day free trial by visiting audibletrial.com/nerdery and murdery. That's audibletrial.com/nerdery and murdery. Don't let your busy life get in the way of that great book you've been wanting to read. Go get your free trial of Audible today. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. This is Geoffrey, and we've talked about many times before that I experience problems and struggles with my mental health. And really, without a healthy mind, being truly happy and at peace is hard. The good news is therapy does work. It's helped for me, but what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools to help. Or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships at work, or you're not dealing well with stress. Whatever you need, it's really time to stop being ashamed of normal human struggles, and it's time to start feeling better because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in-person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is a customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. So join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself because you are your greatest asset. And there's a special offer to Nerdery and Murdery listeners. You can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/nerdery and murdery. That's betterhelp.com/nerdery and murdery. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this podcast.
You're listening to the sweet sounds of Nerdery and Murdery.
You're an idiot. Welcome to episode 67 of Nerdery and Murdery.
Big 67. I'm Zig with your Nerdery.
And I'm Geoffrey with your Murdery. I don't have much except to just let you get into it. I know you've got a big nerdery subject today that I know you're very happy with.
Yes, I am.
So go ahead and take it over, Zig.
Okay. Cast your mind back. It's 1981/1982, right? I'm like an 8-9-year-old kid. We come home from dinner at I can't remember if it was Showbiz or Crystals, but we played some games and watched a show and had some pizza, and it was a great time, was had by all. It's in the summertime. I come home. My folks were going to watch the news because they got home right before the news started at 10 o'clock. So I'm like, well, I kind of want to watch Star Trek. So I went into my room, and Star Trek wasn't on yet. It didn't come on until like 10:30. So I turned on the show that was there. I was like, what is this? It must be some sort of weird program. You know what? I'll just turn it on and play with my action figures till Star Trek comes on. And it was the show called Doctor Who. It was on Channel 39 in the early 80s for a couple of years. And I turn it on and I am fascinated. I see this character who is bigger than life with this giant multicolored scarf and this big shock of curly brown hair. And he's the smartest guy in the room. And I am just flabbergasted by this show. And then I got to watch Star Trek. And then they took it off the air. And I was really sad because it was a couple of years before I found it again. And then they started showing it on runs on Channel 13, which was our PBS station, KERA, which I've mentioned before. And it was the first episode of Tom Baker in Robot as Doctor Who. So,
and this is your first dive into Doctor Who. This is where you started.
This is I remember it I don't even remember what episode was playing. That's what's weird. I remember coming home from having a great evening out and sitting down to watch this, thinking, oh, this is going to be some sort of crappy show. Well, I'll just wait for Star Trek to come on.
So this is your Doctor.
This is my Doctor.
Right. So I know you've probably got a lot on this with Tom Baker. Tom Baker technically is my first Doctor because it is the first one I saw as well, even though I really kind of consider Chris Eccleston really my first Doctor. But Tom Baker was the first I saw of it. And I've said it before, I sometimes had a hard time keeping with this version of the Doctor because sometimes it would be a half-hour episode, sometimes it would be a 3-hour episode, and I'm like, oh my God, I just can't stick with this.
Yes. So Doctor Who, for those uninitiated, was a serialized television show for children in England, and it was a science fiction show. So basically what would happen is they would have a little half-hour episode that would be part of a larger story. And each story was between 2 and 6 to even 8 episodes. Now, by Tom Baker's time, they rarely ever did 6-episode stories. Usually they were between 2 and 4. There are some 6-episode in Tom Baker's run. Usually they'll get one a year. But yeah, so
I find it interesting that it was a children's show,
yes.
and I've never seen it as a children's show. I would see it more as young adult into adult.
It was originally designed to teach children about science and history.
It's interesting.
That was the original idea. Yeah, but by this time it was fully a science fiction show, and it really was. It wasn't for little kids. It was for teens and up.
Mm-hmm.
But little kids still watched it, and it was a rite of passage in England, watching it from behind the couch. So when the monsters came on, you would tuck behind the couch, and then when the music was over, you'd pop your head back out to see what the Doctor was going to do. And it was so when you could stop watching it from behind the couch and actually sit on the couch and watching it, that's when you were a big kid in England. So yeah, that was. I was shocked by it because I didn't know anything about it. I was, like I said, 8, 9, somewhere around in there. And I saw the show and I was like, this is the weirdest show I've ever seen. And, and then I watched an episode of Star Trek right after that. And I continued to watch it, but I would go to bed, I would turn the show on, and then usually fall asleep during the Star Trek episode. So when they took it off the air, because 39 stopped running it, and it was off for about a year, I want to say. And that's when KERA started running them as the movies. The first time I saw one that was a full movie where it was more than one episode at a time because I didn't have to keep up with them, I was like, oh my God, this is going to be heaven. I wonder how many of these there are. Because at the time I didn't know. What I didn't realize is it would form a lifelong love of this show,
right?
So the Fourth Doctor is an incarnation of Doctor Who, the protagonist of the BBC science fiction television series Doctor Who, and it was portrayed by Tom Baker. Now, in the series narrative, the Doctor is a centuries-old alien Time Lord from the planet Gallifrey who travels in time and space in his TARDIS, time and relative dimensions in space, frequently with companions. At the end of their life, the Doctor regenerates, and as a result, the physical appearance and personality of the Doctor changes. Now, Baker portrayed the Fourth Doctor as a whimsical and sometimes brooding individual whose enormous personal warmth is at times tempered with his capacity for righteous anger. His companions were intrepid journalist Sarah Jane Smith, played by Elizabeth Sladen, Sergeant Lieutenant Harry Sullivan, played by Ian Marter, both of UNIT. His later companions were the savage warrior Leela, a robotic dog named K9, a time lady named Romana, who was played by two actresses, Mary Tam and Lila Ward, and teen genius Adric, played by Matthew Waterhouse, who was an alien teenage aristocrat, Nissa, who was the alien teenage aristocrat, and Nissa was played by Sarah Sutton, sorry, and an Australian flight attendant, Tegan, played by Janet Fielding. So he had a lot of companions. And his companions ran with him for a while. Romana was 2 seasons. Leela was a season and a half. Sarah Jane was 2.5 seasons. And Tom Baker was actually the first Doctor to have an episode without a companion. The Trial of a Time Lord. Between Sarah and Leela, there actually was an episode where he didn't have a companion. Now, he ran around with a bunch of different Time Lords in the episode, so they kind of filled in the companion's role. But it was also the first time you actually got to see Gallifrey, was the Trial of a Time Lord. And what they looked like and how they kind of acted. You saw them a little bit before when they would, like, we need to pull the Doctor out of... It'd be one shot of them standing around a computer going, we need to pull the Doctor out of space and time and have him help us. And that'd be it. That's all you ever saw. Or when he was standing up as Patrick Troughton being judged. It was just, 3 people in robes. But they actually kind of put the society together. So that was interesting. Tom Baker was born in 1934. Tom Baker was an older actor when he started this. He looked a lot younger than he actually was. He played the role from 1974 to 1981. So the longest tenure that anyone's ever played it. He also did narration in the television comedy series Little Britain and Little Britain USA. His voice has been described as sonorous, I guess, and he's voted the 4th most recognizable in the UK. But he didn't start out that way. At 15, Baker began to study as a monk. Yeah, which I thought was odd. He gradually lost his vocation, and he left religious life at age 21 and undertook national service in the Royal Army Medical Corps. Upon leaving the Army, he served in the Merchant Navy, and he became an actor joining the Royal National Theatre under Laurence Olivier while he was still a merchant seaman. He was in his 30s when his professional acting career actually started. His first major film role was Grigory Rasputin in Nicholas and Alexander in 1971, and he was 37 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. He went on to play the villainous Prince Cora in the Golden Voyage of Sinbad, 1973, and that's what led to him being cast in Doctor Who. One of the casting directors was sitting in bed with his wife talking about, who they're going to cast, and his wife actually knew Tom Baker. She said, "Why don't you cast Tom Baker? We need to go. You know what? Let's go. Come on." And she made him get up and go to the movies and go watch the Golden Voyage of Sinbad. And he called him the next day. At that time, Tom Baker was toying with quitting because even though he'd made this movie and this other movie, he hadn't done anything else. So he was working on a building site as a construction worker, and he got the call. And so he had to take a day off. He went down, and they told him before he left he had the role. So he went to the building site the very next day and quit, but he brought everybody lunch.
Huh.
But he had to go take out a loan because he didn't have any money because they hadn't started paying him yet. So yeah, he took out a loan from banks. Look, I've just been cast as Doctor Who. Here's the paperwork. And they're like, you've been cast as Doctor Who? Yeah, you're okay. You're good. We got you. They honored the loan simply because he had his contract that he'd just signed.
Wow, that's funny.
Yeah. Well, it's BBC. It's a good paying gig.
Yeah.
So during his period as a star of Doctor Who, the original series received its highest viewer figures. His era featured many stories which became regarded as classics, and he remains one of the most instantly recognizable incarnations of Doctor Who. When you say Doctor Who, people usually think of Tom Baker.
I would agree.
He continued to feature in regular television roles in his career, including the series Medics, Randall and Hopkirk, Deceased, and Monarch of the Glen. But he also narrated commercials, video games, audiobooks, radio plays, music albums, and television series. Baker has been married 3 times. First to Anne Wheatcroft, with whom he has 2 sons. The second time being his Doctor Who co-star Lila Ward, the second Romana, and he got married in like 82 after he quit. They didn't stay married for very long. And he met his wife, third wife, Sue Gerald whilst working at the BBC in London. The Fourth Doctor appeared in 172 episodes.
Wow.
Yeah. 179 counting the regeneration at the end of Planet of the Spiders at its beginning, and the series Shada, which got aborted. It's also pretty famous because this is also the time that Douglas Adams was script editor for Doctor Who, and Douglas Adams actually wrote this episode called Shada, which is really, really amazing. But there was a worker strike at the BBC, so they never finished filming it. They went back and did a bunch of audio recordings for it. So they filmed part of it, and you can see it, and they've kind of built in these audio recordings so you can actually follow the storyline. But yeah, it never got released. So yeah, one of the lost episodes was actually because they had a trade dispute and just didn't film it. He appeared in the special The Five Doctors, but it was from footage from Shada, because he didn't actually want to do it. When they did it, The Five Doctors was like 2 years after he'd quit, and he didn't want to do it because he was already having trouble with being typecast. He was back in the position he was at before he started Doctor Who, where he couldn't get jobs. Mm-hmm. He did appear in the charity special Dimensions in Time, which I've discussed before, which is not good. It's about 20 to 30 minutes long, and it's with the cast of EastEnders walking around London, or walking around the set of EastEnders, and it's just not good. But it is interesting to see because everybody who was alive at the time was in it. He did a series of television advertisements in New Zealand, and then Tom Baker did reappear in the 50th anniversary special as the mysterious curator of the museum.
Right.
Which caused me to weep openly in front of a house full of people. And that was quite embarrassing. Angie Grogan can attest; she was there. So in the United States, this is who we think of as Doctor Who. Tom Baker lost the Best Doctor category only 3 times. Once to Sylvester McCoy in 1990, and twice to David Tennant.
I could see that.
Yeah.
I mean, David Tennant was a brilliant doctor.
God. Tom Baker is known for his trademark look and having a fondness for jelly babies. Now, the idea of that look, there was a painting. I have the artist. It was Toulouse-Lautrec. There's a Toulouse-Lautrec painting. It's a man in a beret with a red scarf thrown around his shoulder. I've got a picture of the painting is in our list. Okay. That's where they got the idea. It was like, let's make the Doctor look like that guy. So they brought Tom Baker in, and they're like, hey, we want to do this. He's like, yeah, I like the idea of the scarf, but it should be really long. They're like, okay, yeah. So they wanted to make like a scarf that would go down both sides, but not long for a regular sized person. Tom Baker's also like 6'3".
Oh, I didn't know he was that tall.
Yeah, he's a very tall man. So they wanted to make it a little longer for like a 6'3" person. So they gave this knitter all this yarn and said, go ahead and make us a multicolored scarf. It needs to look like this, this, and this. The knitter misunderstood and used all of the yarn.
Huh.
Which is why that first scarf is so long. It ends up being, I want to say 21 feet. Because it goes down. Because again, he's 6'3". It goes down both sides and wraps around in 3 big loops. But he also used it. He was able to use it like a lasso in a couple of episodes. That was kind of one of the things in Peter Davidson's first episode. He's kind of lost in the TARDIS trying to get around after his regeneration, and he starts to undo one of the scarves. Because I made another one later on in Tom Baker's run, which was just maroon and black. But he undoes the scarf as a sort of a way to find his way out of the TARDIS, which was it was the breaking with the Tom Baker, because he did do it for so long. Fourth Doctor's time enjoyed a significant boost in viewer ratings. averaging between 8 and 10 million viewers in his first year, which was 20 to 25% of the entire viewing British public.
Wow.
Yeah. By 1979, the figures averaged between 9 and 10 and 11 million, going as high as 16.1 million for the final episode of City of Death. But ITV was also off the air at that time because there was an ITV technician strike, basically corresponding with them trying to film Shada. So BBC was the only one on the air for a few weeks. So yeah, that last episode of the City of Death got a big play. City of Death also has John Cleese in it. It was the first time they basically filmed outside of England. They filmed in Paris, the City of Death. They didn't film but a few days, but one of the scenes is they land the TARDIS in an art museum, and John Cleese is this art critic who's talking about how brilliant it is as a piece of art. And then the Doctor and Romana run up, get in it, and it disappears. And he stops saying what he's saying, looks at the person, and goes, "And it's amazing, the artistic." Anyway, it's a nice bit. So, and it was kind of a hiatus from Faulty Towers that John Cleese was doing at the time. But yeah, it's a really funny bit. If you've never seen City of Death, it's a good one. So the Tom Baker started in Planet of Spiders, which was John Pertwee's last episode. John Pertwee goes down and gets radiation poisoning, dealing with these giant spiders. And he comes back, and this other Time Lord kind of helps him to regenerate. He falls down on the floor, and you actually see the transformation of John Pertwee's face into Tom Baker's face, and that's the first time we see him. The next episode, Robot, which was his first true episode, was you get to see him change into his outfit because he goes through a couple of different outfits. He looks like Boudica, the British warrior queen, and then he's dressed as a Jack of Hearts, and then as a like a Commedia dell'arte clown. And then he goes back in and comes out in the scarf with the coat, with a hat on, and he says, "Is this okay?" And Harry Sullivan's like, "Yeah, that's fine. Come on, let's go." Mm. So he's still technically working for UNIT, but eventually he goes away. In his first season, he works for UNIT a little bit, and he's got to return Harry to Earth because the robot episode is a UNIT episode. So at the end of it, he decides to show Harry, "Hey, we'll take a quick trip to the moon, and I'll show you how my TARDIS works," because Harry's becoming his new companion, and they're gone for like the rest of the season. They don't come back till the very last episode, and they've actually been gone because it's a time machine. They've actually been gone like 6 months, so Harry's kind of in trouble. So he can't go with the Doctor again when they leave. But Ian Marter is great. Ian Marter, the actor, goes on to write a bunch of Doctor Who novelizations after this. That was his kind of big claim to fame. He was really enamored with the show and the writing and everything else. So he wrote a bunch of novelizations and made his living doing that until the day he died. He wrote several, not just novelizations of the television shows, but different novels with different ideas. Of course, we had Sarah Jane. The Third Doctor, you get to see Gallifrey and how it's set up, but you also get to see Genesis of the Daleks, which is the best Dalek episode. Hands down, bar none. It's the creation. They're hardly in it. They're only in it at the very end, but it's how the Daleks came to be. It's how they became the little lumps of hate and tanks that they are. And it starts with this one scientist who's partially deformed from radiation and chemical poisoning, who's in this chair that looks like the bottom half of a Dalek, whose only his hand works. He's got electronic ears for hearing, and he's got an electronic eye in the middle of his head for seeing. He's almost completely gone. Christopher Pike. He is Christopher Pike.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'm with you.
Yeah, except that he can move his hand, but he can only move it a few inches one way or the other, and it's to control his little chair that he runs around in. Davros comes back several times after this because the idea is just so brilliant. Tom Baker only did 2 Dalek episodes, or 2 Dalek stories. Genesis of the Daleks, and later on, Destiny of the Daleks, where Davros is reincarnated. But instead of doing a lot of the older stuff, the writers for Tom Baker wanted to do different ideas, new things. And, Star Wars came out during this time. So you get some really, really good episodes. I'd like to talk about a couple in general. They wanted to do a gothic horror idea. So there's a couple of seasons that have a gothic horror feel to them. And another couple of seasons that have a almost like a Jason and the Argonauts feel. That was intentional. It's still very spacey, very science fiction-y, and after of course Star Wars, it got real science fiction-y. But he very rarely was on Earth. One of the episodes I'd like to talk about is The Face of Evil. Originally, it was titled "The Day That God Went Insane." They knew they could not run with that title, so they chose The Face of Evil. So the Doctor's he ends his companionship with Sarah Jane. And then he goes on to do The Deadly Assassin, where you get to see Gallifrey and everything else. And then he travels to this planet that he visited centuries before. You never saw the episode where he had visited it before, but there was a survey team that had landed on the planet, and he helped them fix their computer so they could go back home when the survey was done. But he accidentally imprinted his own mind on the computer, Zoannon. Zoannon got multiple personalities and became a god on this planet. It separated the technicians, or the Tesh, as they had been called, and the survey team, or the Sevatine, as they became later on, into 2 distinct equal groups. The Tesh, who had mind powers, but were physically small and very mind-oriented, thought-oriented, and the Sevatine, who were warriors, who were hunters, and they were big, and they were burly, and they were strong and tough. And so Zoannon was crazy. But the Sevatine saw Zoannon as a god, as did the Tesh. And basically, it was just this crazy computer that had achieved sentience. The Face of Evil was Tom Baker's face. Like there was these. Oh,
wow.
Yeah. So there's this. I have a picture of it. There's this mountain with his face carved into the side of it, like Mount Rushmore, and they have to climb up into his mouth to get to the Sevatine. That's the only way to cross this barrier that Zoannon has put up. Zoannon also has these monsters or ghosts that are essentially Tom Baker's head. When you get to see them, because you can't see them for most of the time, when you light them up with a laser gun, or they weren't laser guns, whatever guns they were using, they would illuminate, and it was Tom Baker's face, just as a giant head, almost like a beholder. It was really cool. One of the best episodes I've ever seen, and that's also where he got Leela. So if you don't see any Tom Baker episodes, and I cannot stress this enough, you should see the first 4 seasons regardless. Just watch them all. They're all good. There's not a bad episode in there. After The Key to Time is really good, which is he did an entire season where he was looking for the key to time. All the episodes tie back to that Key to Time. It's really great. That's a great episode. After that, it starts to drop off. There's some rough episodes. I don't think they're necessarily bad, but they're not the quality of his first 4 to 5 seasons. But if you don't watch any of them, The Face of Evil and The Invisible Enemy, where he picks up K9, watch those 2. That encompasses Doctor Who.
I just saw the David Tennant one just this week where he went where he ran back into Sarah Jane and,
Oh,
and
yeah.
K9
Yeah,
and
School
everything.
Days or something like that.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
That is a really, really good one. I love that one. I think isn't that a two-parter? I think
so.
Yeah, I think that's a two-parter. That's a really good one. So the invisible enemy, the doctor and Leela visit the Bi-Al Foundation medical center where they acquire the robot dog K9. K9 is malfunctioning at the time. Time distortion leads the TARDIS back to contemporary rural England after that. But yeah, in the invisible enemy, basically there is a virus in space that is sentient and starts infecting people. And it goes, at one point, the doctor himself gets infected and puts himself in a coma. Leela and the doctor are then cloned, shrunk down, and injected into the doctor's brain.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's an entire 1 to 2 episodes where they're running around inside the doctor's brain. And then they go to extract them because they were looking to extract some of the DNA of this creature. They go to extract them, and instead of extracting them, they extract the leader of the virus and grow it. Now, having said all that, the virus leader, big thinking monster that it is, looks pretty cheesy. It's definitely like either a very small diminutive person or a child in a suit. Obviously, I mean, it hangs off of them. It's goofy looking, but it's the BBC. Mm-hmm. They only had so much budget. It's cool looking, but it doesn't look realistic at all. However, the rest of the episode, down to the miniaturization where they take these shuttles and fly them into this asteroid that's also a medical base, the Bi-Al Foundation, and then they explode it. Matt Irvine, who was the model maker for the BBC, if they could have given Oscars to somebody, they should have given it to this guy, because the amount of money that he had and what he did with it is amazing.
What about Emmys? He could have won an Emmy.
Yeah, I think he ended up winning some British BAFTAs. But yeah, just the model work. It's amazing because it's so intricate and beautiful. And keeping in mind, he had no money when he did this, but it's great. Having said that, the costume of the evil virus, space virus, is dumb looking. But I mean, a little willing suspension of disbelief. You get to see that story, and it pulls the thing out of Tom Baker so he can come back to being the Doctor and defeat the thing, and he does. But yeah, the 2 episodes, The Invisible Enemy and The Face of Evil, are worth the price of admission. There are other ones. The Talons of Wing Chiang is good. However, there is an actor doing Yellowface, which at the time wasn't viewed as bad. Now it's not so good. Which is sad because they had other Asian actors in that episode. I don't know why they didn't cast, because you can't tell who the actor is because of the makeup. It's also the first time that Deep Roy is in Doctor Who. Yeah, he plays Mr. Sin, or the what did they call it? The something homunculus.
Draco homunculus?
No, it was not the Draco homunculus. Damn it. I think it was the Porca homunculus. Basically, it was a pig and a person put together. And it has to do with an escaped convict from the 25th century who started a war, and he travels back in time to 18th century London. And you get to see, or not 18th century London, I'm sorry, 19th century London. It's a very Jack the Ripper episode. It's a long one too. It's got giant rats in it. It's a good one. I think everybody should see the first 4 to 5 seasons of Tom Baker. I mean, just to appreciate Doctor Who as a whole, because you really get that. And then you do the Invasion of Time, which is where he loses Leela. He goes back to Gallifrey, and the reason they did that episode is they wanted to use the same sets, but it's a 6-parter. And basically the Doctor is being controlled by these things called the Vardens. And they can read his mind. And the reason the Doctor, they want to take over Gallifrey. So the Doctor goes back and he basically is playing with everybody, and they can't figure out why he's so crazy. And the reason he's so crazy is he's trying to keep them from knowing what he's actually doing, because they can read his mind the whole time. And they can travel through radio signals. He finally gets to where he can just about defeat them. And then he finds out they're actually working for the Sontarans, and the Sontarans invade Gallifrey. And then there is a chase through the TARDIS, and different parts of the TARDIS, which you get to see a lot of in this episode, which is why the Invasion of Time is a lot of fun. Having said that, the Invasion of Time is also very long. It's a 6-parter. It didn't need to be a 6-parter. But they end up inventing a demat gun, which dematerializes things, which is how they defeat the Sontarans. But it's a good one to watch just for the running through these warehouses in the TARDIS, and you're like, oh my God, I forgot. This thing is the size of a shopping mall. And they're running through these warehouses. They go through this one warehouse, and they come back down, and they go through another warehouse. It's the same warehouse. They just keep walking through it, But then there's a pool room, and you get to see all of that stuff in this one episode. It's really cool. He has a problem with the Guardians, who kind of protect the galaxy in the Key to Time series. He has to go and get different pieces of this Key to Time that are hidden as different things or people. In one case, it is a person. And you put them together to make the key to time. You put the locator in the middle of it, and the White Guardian can go back and reset time and everything else. But the Black Guardian wants chaos to reign, and it's really interesting. The key to time kind of looks dumb, though. I mean, it's very late 1970s, early 1980s. It's a kind of a crystal Rubik's Cube with a little piece of plastic sticking up out of the top of it. It's kind of dumb looking, but I mean, it was the style of the time. So near the end, the Doctor prepares to travel to the planet Logopolis to get his chameleon circuit fixed. And this is when he picks up a flight attendant named Tegan. And because there's this conduit between E-space and our universe, he finds out that the Logopolitans, who are these mathematicians on this planet, have been shunting things from our space into this E-space pocket universe because our space is collapsing. They can't figure out why. Well, it turns out it's a plot with the Master. So the Master shows back up. And there's a big fight at the end, and they have to use this space listening post that's in England. It's an actual place where it's a satellite dish where they're looking for radio signals from. It's like England's version of SETI. And Tom Baker falls off of that, and that's where he regenerates. He's been seeing this ghostly figure the whole episode, and he goes and talks to the ghostly figure. And Adric's like, who was that? He's like, don't worry about it. And at the very end, the ghostly figure walks up, and he changes into Peter Davison, and that was the end of his run. His 7-year run.
I'm sorry to go backwards.
Yes.
Just real quick. The key to time, that sounds so much, and I can't remember the name of it. I was trying to look it up. The key in Douglas Adams, is it So Long and Thanks for All the Fish, where they're trying to stop that planet from finding the key to unlock the planet?
Life, the Universe, and Everything.
Is it
the Cricket
Life,
Warriors, yeah.
Yes, the Cricket Warriors, yes. And they're looking for the various pieces of the key. It almost sounds like it came directly from that.
Was a script writer at Doctor Who at that time.
Okay, so maybe they took that from Douglas Adams, or maybe he wrote that.
I think he used it twice.
Okay,
because that very next year he was the script editor for Doctor Who. So,
okay, because it sounded just like
that is exactly
the cricket key.
Honestly, if you're a fan of Douglas Adams, even though it's considered the roughest season 12 and 13, watch them. There's a lot of Douglas Adams humor that just gets thrown in there.
That's cool.
Yeah, where he gets tripped by a scarf, or he closes a scarf in the TARDIS door, and there's just little Douglas Adams jokes just peppered through the whole thing. Yes.
Sorry, didn't mean to go backwards.
No. I'm glad you did, because I kind of wanted to circle back to that anyway, and I did. I was looking for a way back. But yeah, so I guess kind of in wrapping up, the Doctor also goes to E-Space, which is a negative universe where he picks up Adric. It's a great episode where the Star Cruiser from Earth had crashed, and these people had spent centuries trying to, or what they thought was a century trying to rebuild it. Turns out they weren't the survivors from Earth at all. They were an evolved species of spider that was brought there by the Star Cruiser, and they'd been there millennia instead of just 100 years. It's brilliant. It's called Full Circle. It's really cool. Again, I watch the first 5 seasons. Just watch them. But if you can only watch 2 episodes, it needs to be The Face of Evil and The Invisible Enemy. That's my pick. If I'm going out on a, just like with John Pertwee, if you don't watch any other John Pertwee episodes, watch The Mutants.
Right.
If you don't watch any other episodes of Tom Baker, watch The Face of Evil and The Invasion of Time. That will give you everything you wanted to know about Doctor Who.
Awesome.
Well, thank you, sir. That was a lot of fun.
No, thanks for taking that trip. I was excited for us to get to Tom Baker. Knowing that was your first Doctor for all these years, I was looking forward to us getting here. And we're getting more into the Doctors I'm more familiar with now, so we're closing in on Chris Eccleston, and get there soon.
Yes, we will. Oh, okay. 2 more things. Sorry. Robert Holmes and producer Philip Hinchcliffe conscientiously tapped into the horror icons like the Mummy and Frankenstein. It was Robert Holmes and Philip Hinchcliffe who were kind of the driving force behind that kind of horror element. And
gotcha.
Then Graham Williams wanted to do sort of body horror where, people get copied or so.
Okay.
That's it.
Good times.
Thank you, sir.
Good times. I appreciate that trip. So with that, we'll step over to the murdery side of the house.
Murder.
For today, I got my information from Fox 2, the Midwest Crime Files, True Crime Daily, and St. Louis Magazine, and I'm going to be talking about the Coleman Family Murders.
The Coleman Family Murders.
So, police in Columbia, Illinois walked into a house of horrors on the morning of May 5th, 2009. 31-year-old Sherry Coleman, formerly Sherry Weiss, and her sons 11-year-old Garrett and 9-year-old Gavin had been strangled to death in their beds. It would take 2 years and thousands of hours of police work before they would have justice. Sherry Weiss met Chris Coleman at a canine training seminar at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio in 1997. Weiss, who was 21 at the time, was an MP in the Air Force, and Coleman was a Marine who was 22. They dated just a few months before Weiss became pregnant with Garrett, and the two married. Gavin would be born about 2 years later. Chris Coleman grew up the son of Ron and Connie Coleman, evangelical pastors in Monroe County, Illinois. And Joyce Meyer, a televangelist and head of an international Christian ministry who knew the Colemans, hired Chris to work on her security team, and it wasn't long before Chris became Joyce's personal bodyguard, earning a salary of $100,000. Chris, Sherry, and the boys lived in a 2-story home in the 2800 block of Robert Drive in Columbia, Illinois, which was a short drive from Chris's parents in Chester. Friends and neighbors described Chris and Sherry as a wonderful couple, and with Gavin and Garrett, a beautiful family. But in mid-November 2008, a threatening email filled with obscenities is sent to Chris Coleman, Joyce Meyer, and her son. And I have a copy of one of the emails here. There's a little bit that's redacted. So this says, subject, Chris's family, they are dead. I'm sure you will make I'm sure this will make it to someone in the company. If you jackasses are like any other company, this will be someone's account. Pass this on to Chris. Tell Joyce to stop preaching the redacted, or Chris's family will die. If I can't get to Joyce, then I will kill someone close to her, and if I can't get to him, then I will kill his wife and kids. I know Joyce's schedule, so then I know Chris's schedule. If Joyce doesn't quit preaching the bullshit, then they will die. During the Houston conference, I will kill them all as they sleep. If I don't hit there, then I will kill them during the book tour or the trip to India. I know where he lives, and I know when they are alone, redacted, them all, and they will die soon. Tell that mother, redacted, next time let me talk to Joyce. She needs to hear what I have to say, and now she will.
Oh, so they were after his boss, not him.
Right.
Okay.
But they were threatening him to get to Joyce.
To get to her.
Yes.
Okay.
Because this person apparently wanted to talk to Joyce and tell her to quit preaching.
Okay.
And so they were trying through the bodyguard.
Right on.
In early January 2009, Coleman reached out to a neighbor who worked for the Columbus Police Department, who was Detective Sergeant Justin Barlow. He told Barlow and local authorities about a threatening letter that had been left in his mailbox. So police agreed to patrol the neighborhood, and Barlow installed a security camera pointed at the Coleman's mailbox. Neither the camera nor the extra patrols yielded any results. Over this same period of time, Sherry would tell friends that Chris's demeanor had changed and she suspected an affair. She also confided to a friend, if something happens to me, Chris did it. In late April, Chris Coleman contacted local police again about another note with threats against his family. I have this one as well, and it says, I'm giving you the last warning. You have not listened to me and you have not changed your ways. I have warned you to stop traveling and to stop carrying on with this fake religious life of stealing people's money. You think you are so special to do what you do protecting, or think you are protecting her. She is a redacted and not worth you doing it. Stop today or else. I know your schedule. You can't hide from me ever. I'm always watching. I know when you leave in the morning and I know when you stay home. I saw you leave this morning. I will be watching. You better stop traveling and doing what you are doing. This is my last warning. Your worst nightmare is about to happen. So on the morning of May 5th, 2009, Chris Coleman left his home in the 2800 block of Robert Drive to go work out at a gym in South St. Louis County. He called Sherry's cell phone and left a message, and he texted her again while at the gym and called once more while he was on his way home. Chris called Barlow and the Columbia Police Department and requested they check on Sherry and the boys. So Barlow met a Columbia police officer in front of the Coleman residence. They too discovered that a basement window had been opened. So the pair entered through the basement and made their way through the house. During the search, they saw spray painting on the walls in big red letters that said, quote, I am always watching. You have paid and punished. Police then found the bodies of Sherry, Garrett, and Gavin in their beds. They had ligature marks on their necks indicating they had been strangled with a cord or rope.
Wow.
While police were searching the house, Chris pulled into the driveway just before 7 a.m. Another officer arrived and kept Chris outside the residence. Barlow and another Columbia officer left the home to inform Chris that his family was dead. Chris was then taken to Columbia Police headquarters and interviewed. Investigators suspected Chris can be involved in the family deaths. Digital evidence recovered from Sherry's phone and Chris's laptop pointed to marital problems and pointed suspicion over an affair with a woman named Tara Lentz. As detectives grilled Chris, they learned Lentz was Sherry's friend that lived in St. Petersburg, Florida. Chris told authorities he knew Lentz and the other two were friends themselves. At this time, officers in Florida were questioning Lentz about the nature of her relationship with Chris Coleman. A picture emerged of a man engaging in an affair with his wife's friend. The two had a rendezvous in Arizona and Hawaii while Chris was traveling for work and engaged numerous texts, pictures, and videos of sexual nature. Coleman's family held funerals for Sherry, Gavin, and Garrett on May 9th at Evergreen Cemetery in Chester. Sherry's family had the bodies brought to a funeral home in Chicago suburb days later for a visitation, but Chris Coleman did not attend that service. All the while, detectives with the major case squad were piecing together a case against Chris. Computer and data specialists inspected his laptop. Handwriting analysis looked at the threatening emails, notes, and spray-painted messages in the home. And forensics examiners pored over police paperwork and the autopsy report on the victims. Did you know they could do handwriting analysis from spray paint?
I did not.
Yes.
But I guess, yeah, that makes sense.
Evidence was also recovered from a stretch of Interstate 255 that authorities searched near the Jefferson Barracks Bridge, the same route Coleman would typically take going to and from the gym. However, cell phone tracking would later show Chris took a longer road home on the morning of May 5th. Investigators had very good reason to suspect Chris Coleman killed Sherry and her sons. In an interview with reporters days later, the head of the major case squad, Major Jeff Connor, said he believed he knew who killed Sherry, Gavin, and Garrett. After a conference call with forensics pathologist Dr. Michael Baden, in which the doctor said Sherry and her kids were almost certainly murdered before Chris left the house that morning, police believed they had their man. Chris Coleman was arrested on May 9th, 2009 at his parents' house in Chester, Illinois, and charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder. Police said Coleman spray-painted his walls to make it look like someone else killed his family. After lengthy delays and pushes to move the proceedings elsewhere, the trial began on April 25th, 2001 in Waterloo, Illinois. Jurors were selected from Perry County to avoid the possibility of a tainted jury. Prosecutors attempted to paint a picture of a man desperate to get out of a marriage and run off with his mistress by pinning his family's murders on a mystery assailant. Dr. Baden testified on behalf of the prosecution about the time of death of Sherry and her boys, and they were likely killed hours before Chris Coleman left his home that morning. A computer forensics analyst told jurors that threatening emails sent to Chris in the months prior to the murders were actually sent from Coleman's own laptop using his own login information.
Oh.
Law enforcement from Columbia Police Department, including the Coleman's neighbor Justin Barlow, testified about the immediate aftermath of the murders and subsequent investigation into Chris Coleman. A Columbia detective said she found a receipt for red spray paint in Coleman's house and eventually traced it to a hardware store. Joyce Meyer made a recorded testimony which was played before the court. She had not known about the affair but intimated that Coleman might have been fired and had she known about his infidelity. However, she said her ministry employed people who had been divorced. Prosecutors also called Tara Lentz to the stand, and Lentz, who was ordered to travel from Florida to St. Louis to testify, told jurors she and Chris met and began their affair in November of 2008. She said Chris planned on leaving his wife for her and had given Lentz a promise ring during their affair. Lentz testified that Chris said he was going to serve Sherry divorce papers on May 4th or May 5th. The defense maintained that someone had hacked Coleman's computer to send the threatening messages and snuck into the family's home on the morning of May 5th, 2009 to commit the murders. Chris Coleman did not take stand during the 9-day trial, and after 15 hours of deliberation over 2 days, the jury returned guilty verdicts on all counts on May 5th, 2011, the two-year anniversary to the day of the murders.
Wow.
Juror Kim Ferrari told Fox 2 after the conviction the jury believed Chris Coleman was guilty, but 4 of them needed more proof before delivering a verdict. They found it almost by accident on photographs that had been sitting in the jury room since the deliberations began. She said, quote, "I thought we were going to be a hung jury, but then the more that we kept going, the more it made me see that we just had to keep after it, and we would find the information we needed, and then eventually we did find it." What they found were photographs of Chris Coleman and Tara Lentz on the back of a foam board with October 2008 dates printed on them, which proved to the jurors that the affair began earlier than they had previously been told. Because remember, Coleman had long asserted that he and Lentz began their affair in November of 2008.
Yeah, before the messages started coming in. Or after the messages started coming in.
She also said, when we found that bit of evidence, everybody was like, okay, we're done. Ferrari said she was willing to sentence Coleman to death and believes the jury would have given him the death penalty had they been given the chance. Days after the conviction, Coleman waived his right to be sentenced by the jury and put his fate in the hands of Judge Milton Wharton, who presided over the case. Wharton sentenced Coleman to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Ferrari said it was a surprise. I'm very surprised that Coleman did that, but I think that he knew that he was going to sentence that we were going to sentence him to the death penalty. Asked if she was disappointed the judge did not impose a death sentence, Ferrari said no, because even though I say I'm okay with the death penalty, This way, he is going to have to sit in prison for the rest of his life and think about what he did every day for the rest of his life. Such a sentence would have been symbolic anyway. Former Governor Pat Quinn signed the legislation in 2001 outlawing the death penalty. Coleman was sent to Potomac Correctional Center in Illinois, located between Bloomington and Chicago. And in June of 2011, a judge denied Coleman's request for a retrial. Coleman was then transferred to Dodge Correctional Facility in Waupun, Wisconsin, that August for safety reasons. And that is the story of the Coleman murders.
Huh.
Yeah, he was going out of his way to try to make it seem like, I mean, he was really trying to make it seem like somebody else was doing this, somebody else was threatening him.
Yeah, but it turned out he'd been seeing the other, the side chick.
Yeah, it was
before
him.
The messages.
It was him all along, and I didn't have it in here, but the detective that installed that camera never saw anybody on camera putting the letters in the mailbox, yet the letters still arrived. Yeah. So he wasn't helping himself.
No, he wasn't. He made out a note about the camera.
I think he did know about the camera because he wasn't ever seen putting the letters in the mailbox, which you think he would have done in order to further get the suspicion away from him on what he was going to do.
So here's a question. Why couldn't he have just gotten a divorce? I mean...
Right.
You know?
This is another one where he could have just got... And, you know, he had said that he was worried that he would be fired if he got a divorce, but Joyce Meyer even said there were people working for a ministry that had been through divorce and were still working for.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. He had a good paying job. He liked his job, but he wanted to be with Lentz. And he saw murder of his entire family as the only way out.
As his entire, not just his wife,
his entire family. This is another family annihilator that that is so difficult to understand.
I can't. Okay, I'm sorry, baby. I can see killing your wife. Not that I am planning on killing my wife. I love you, baby. But I can at least understand that logic. You know what I mean?
Not really, but okay, I'm following you.
Yeah. Killing your children?
Right.
You know? And like I said, I'm not, you know.
Well, and it's and I would assume it's because he's wanting to start an entire new life without any baggage whatsoever. He doesn't want any baggage of kids, any baggage of a divorce. Yes, it makes
what a piece of crap.
Absolute piece of crap.
What a piece of crap.
And you,
that's what twists my noodle. It just.
I'm right there with you. Absolutely twist my noodle that you can kill your kids, these children who look up to you, that you're probably their hero, and you just slaughter them.
Yeah, and again, like I said, I can understand killing the spouse. Not that I think it's good, not that I agree with it, but at least that makes logical sense to me. You know what I mean? Actually, no, it doesn't, because he just should have got a divorce, right? And then he could have been with the Lynn lady,
right? And he just couldn't face the divorce because he thought that he would lose. He thought that he would lose everything if he got a divorce, and so instead he killed his entire family.
Yeah.
And he tried setting it up. He tried setting it up before.
Premeditated.
This is big time premeditated. He's lucky he didn't get the death penalty.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Another one of those family annihilators that
I just twist my noodle a lot. Sorry. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thanks for taking that journey with me. That takes us to the end of another recording week. As always, do remember that you can find more information on nerdyandmurder.com. You can find links to this episode as well as pictures. You can also find our contact information there, where if you want to contact us, let us know things you want to hear, let us know things you don't want to hear, let us know of episodes you'd like us to cover. We are happy to cover all of that. You can also find the link to our merchandise on our webpage, where if you wish to show off your nerdery and murdery fandom, please do check out the products that are there for your perusal.
Get a shirt.
Get a shirt, get a mouse pad, get a notepad,
get
stickers for your car. I have one on mine.
Sweet.
You can also find the link to our Patreon, where if you want to get your episodes 2 weeks early, plus if you want to get exclusive episodes, you can only get on our Patreon. Please do check that out. We do put information on the website about the episode, but the actual episode itself is exclusive just to our patrons, and those do come out once a month. Last but not least, don't forget to give us a review wherever you can, on iTunes, on Spotify, on Google Podcasts. Those really help us, help get our information out for people who are looking for information about our content. So please do take a minute. It just takes a minute of your time to put that out there.
Please and thank you.
So with that,
I have been Zig with your nerdery.
and I'm Geoffrey with your murdery.
Cue the music.